All right, welcome everybody to a long overdue Wall Street Oasis live stream. I'm Patrick Curtis, CEO and founder of Wall Street Oasis. It is November 29th at 12:30 or almost 12:30 Pacific time. First off, I want to apologize to everybody that it's been so long. I haven't done a live stream in a while. I wanted to do this live stream because we did release something several weeks ago. Um, a high finance odds calculator that has created kind of a firestorm of submissions. There's thousands of people have taken this quick survey that basically is giving percentage odds of you or whatever your answer is kind of set up. But basically, it gives the odds of what that person or you would be in terms of breaking into high finance. So the reason we release this is not to dissuade or discourage any of you from setting incredibly high goals and pursuing the dream careers. The reason why we did it is so that people would get a much better sense of, what are their true odds of breaking in given their stats. And I think it's probably surprising to a lot of people. But I wanted to kind of just go through just a few kind of examples on the bookends and open it up to questions here. I think we're live on Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn, YouTube, X. I don't think we're live on TikTok, but live on almost everywhere. And I think so. Amir, if you just like if anyone's asking questions on other platforms and I'm not seeing it, I'm looking at the comments, but feel free to kind of stop me and ask questions as I go. But I wanted to take this time to kind of just go through the odds calculator, share my screen, and kind of show some examples and kind of talk through it. So you can kind of interpret your results. You can interpret your results a little bit better in terms of, why the odds calculator is spitting out what it's spitting out and kind of what that means for you and how to potentially increase your odds. So the other reason we did this, and to be frank, I suspected that this would be very popular and people taking this, is because we wanted to show people that the things you can do to increase your odds. There's a lot of things you can do, and they're within your power. And WSO Academy gives you a 12-week program to kind of make sure that you're doing all of the things that are within your power, given your current situation, to kind of try and increase your odds pretty dramatically to land these competitive roles. So the first thing I wanted to do is let's pretend we're someone at a super target school. So like an Ivy League school, super strong, but have very low kind of expectations. So this is probably not most of you, but I thought it'd be an interesting exercise to see what the odds calculator spits out. So hopefully this works. But let's try this. Let's assume that, I'm fine going to any high finance role. It doesn't have to be a Leap boutique. It doesn't have to be any investment banking role. It can be any high finance role. Let's see what happens. No, I'm not in it. Let's pretend I'm like a sophomore, right? Not yet, but I'm planning to. Okay, what type of undergrad school? Let's say I'm at a super target. Okay, have pretty reasonable expectations, any role in high finance, and I'm at a super target. So I'm at like a Harvard, a Princeton, and MIT. What was your undergraduate major, primary concentration? Let's pretend I'm like business or economics. That's fine. Let's pretend I had a freshman summer internship at like a pretty good, like a deal advisory. So very closely related internship my freshman summer already. Let's say I am still pretty early, first semester, or let's say I'm summer after freshman year, first year. So I'm very early, kind of know what I want. That's a huge determinant. If you're late, if you're a junior, your odds drop pretty dramatically, because by that point, as many of you know, in the US, recruiting for investment banking and high finance roles typically happens January through April. In Canada, it's typically April through May. UK, it's already gone on for second year uni students. Let's keep going. Let's say this person in their freshman year, they had a really high GPA too. Let's say they don't need a visa. So we ask this because if you need a visa and you're in the US, it's a major hit to your odds. because there's only a subset of firms will sponsor you an OPT. And guess what? The ones that sponsor you tend to be the larger firms. They tend to be the most competitive firms. So let's say we don't need a visa. Let's say we've already been really active networking as well. We're talking, we've talked to already 10 to 20 people in the past month. So if I look at this, let's say submit this, as you can see, the odds are incredibly high that I will break into any high finance role, because I kind of went to an extreme here. I said, hey, I'm really high GPA. I'm early timing. I'm super target school, all of these things. So the odds of you actually doing it are incredibly high. Like, it's basically going to happen. Now, what happens if instead of that, let's see if I can reset this here. Let's see if I can reset this. I'll go back to here. Here we go. Copy this link. Now let me try starting over. Let me do kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, because I think it'll be pretty indicative of how this can go wrong in the other direction. Let's say I'm delusional. Let's say I only want elite boutique or bulge bracket bank, yet I'm late. I'm at a non-target, not even a super non-target. Let's just say I'm on a non-target. Let's say I'm even a finance and accounting major. I have a semi-related internship. I kind of worked as a finance analyst somewhere, or private wealth management or something like that. Let's say I'm a little bit late though. Okay. So let's say I'm a junior, but my GPA is not that bad. I have like a 3.4. Let's say I don't need a visa because I don't want to complicate things there. And I haven't really networked that much, but I talked to 1 to 4 people in the last month. What does this look like for me? Now, remember, I said I only want elite boutique or bulge bracket bank. So what are my odds of breaking in there, given those factors? So as you can see, my odds are much, much lower. So I want to make sure that people understand how the odds calculator works. Networking matters a lot, but school matters a lot. GPA matters. And more specifically, what are you actually targeting? Is it any finance, high finance role, any IB role, or only elite boutique and bulge bracket banks? That first kind of one really kind of sets the stage of your odds. And so you may be wondering, what would you get in terms of your odds? Maybe we can share the link here for everybody who wants to take it. We'll put it in the post here kind of as the first comment, but Amir, maybe here, I'll send it here too into the comments so people could grab it. Copy link. Here we go. I'll post it right here. Yeah, so we posted it. I might have posted it into just Facebook and YouTube. If you don't see the link, you could just look it up and Google it. Amir, where can they find it?
Just search up WSO odds calculator, and they can find it. And I posted it everywhere: LinkedIn, Instagram, and on all socials, so they can all see it now.
Great, perfect. And then in terms of why we do certain things, I think is important. Let me go back again. We'll go through and do something a little bit more realistic for a lot of you. So I'm going to go back again, take this again, and kind of show you guys why and where kind of the pivot points on each of these questions are, where there's huge differences depending on what you answer. So the first one is obvious. So if your goal and your target is only elite boutique or bulge bracket IB, you are talking about the most elite firms, the highest echelon of finance, incredibly difficult to get into. Now, it doesn't mean you can't do it. People from a complete non-target can still get into an elite boutique. It happens every single year. So it's not that it can't happen, it's just much more difficult. And every other part of your application needs to be on point in order for that to happen. Now, one thing we can't measure on the odds calculator is your technical interview prep. How good a network are you? And these actually play a huge role. So remember, these odds are estimates. They are not exact. And I know Typeform or the survey comes out with like a 0.2, 2.1, but this is just a rough estimate. It's not made to be actually out to 2 decimal places. That's ridiculous. Point is, we're trying to give people a sense of, okay, what's around my range given my stats right now. So if you look at, like, let's say we wanted like NAIB, we're a little more reasonable. We're not investment banking yet. Let's say we're at like a semi-target. Let's say we're we're in a finance and accounting major. We had a very close related internship. We haven't done this. We're early enough. Okay. So this is really important. The reason this is so important is because how early recruiting timelines have shifted. So if you are a junior and you're looking to break into investment banking, not just the elite and bulge brackets, but most of the time, even the middle market firms and some of the lower middle market firms have already conducted their junior summer internship interviews. So basically what that means is, for all of you sophomores out there thinking I have time, next year is when they're going to be recruiting for junior summer. When I'm a junior, obviously I'm going to be recruiting for junior summer, right? Wrong. Actually, in probably 3 months, the majority of the banks will have opened up applications for summer 2025, not summer 2024, summer 2025 internships. If you don't land one of those internships, your odds dramatically drop. And so this is why we're very specific here. Like, if you're in any one of these buckets, like if you're a high school senior going into freshman year, if it's during your freshman year, even summer after freshman, you're good. You're good. This isn't going to drop your odds almost at all. It's still going to be like very, very high. Now, if you're in your first semester, second year, you're still pretty good. You're okay, but it's getting a little bit tighter if you haven't really done too much networking or done anything here. If you're in your second semester, second year, this is late. In 1 month or in 6 weeks, we're going to be in the second semester for a lot of you. And if it's your second year, uni in UK, if it's your second year undergraduate as a sophomore, this is not a good time to be starting your prep. Ideally, you're starting in freshman year or in the networking, or you're starting your first semester, second year, and trying to balance schoolwork with that. Point being, the odds start to dramatically drop once you get down here. So it doesn't drop dramatically during the second semester, second year, because you still have time. You still can get your resume in. You can still get in the resume drops, hopefully land a few interviews, network frantically last second. But here's where it really drops. Summer after sophomore year, second year, or your second year. And the reason why I say second year is because uni in the UK, it is earlier. So it is that second year. If you don't get spring weeks, you're in big trouble, because that leads to summer internships, and the summer internships lead to the full-time offers. And when I say leads to the full-time offers, that means that literally this past year, there were almost no lateral hires. There were almost no spots outside of the internship offers given. And the intern offer rates were pretty significantly lower this past summer compared to previous years. So it means there were even less opportunities for non-traditional candidates. There were less opportunities elsewhere. So anyways, this is bad. Like, if you're starting junior, senior year, you've already graduated, and you're suddenly like, I want to go to an elite boutique, it's going to be incredibly difficult. Usually there needs to be some sort of half step or a reset with an MBA or a master's program. Be careful. Master's program being a top master's in finance program, ideally top 3, 4, meaning Vandy, Princeton, MIT, or a top 15-ish MBA. And I say top 15-ish MBA if you're going for IB. Going outside that top 15, top 20, it starts to really drop off in terms of placements to front office investment banking. I want to make sure that's specific, because you may go to a top 20 MBA or 30th ranked MBA, and they're like, oh, we placed 7 kids at Goldman. Make sure it's not middle office, back office. So anyways, let's say here I am early enough. Let's say I'm in the summer after my freshman year, so I'm okay. I still have time. I did a good job my freshman year. I had a decent GPA, don't need a visa. And I've actually started networking. So like, I've talked to 10 to 20 people. I think my odds are going to be pretty good here. Yeah, 47% chance of breaking into any investment bank, coming even from that non-target. Simply because I'm networking, I'm early, meaning I'm already on top of it, and I've started that. So point is, there's a lot of other things that go into your odds. This is like almost like a the odds can only know what we input, right? So it's giving you like what's the median odds. It doesn't mean you can't take this 47% and get it up closer to 90% by making sure your resume is polished, making sure your LinkedIn's polished, making sure your interview skills are good, making sure you're approaching your networking the right way, making sure you're leveraging software. Are you leveraging AI on your resume, on your LinkedIn? What are the steps you're doing such that you're widening the top of your funnel and then widening the actual funnel itself such that more offers drop through? A lot of people think, I'm going to become a better financial modeler. They go take financial modeling courses, put it on the resume, but they don't realize like the skills to land the job are different from the skills to excel on the job. And so we want to make sure that that's why in Academy, we have all these pillars, which has a lot of financial modeling training and has these boot camps. But a lot of our focus, especially early on in the Academy, is going to be all about making sure you're developing the skills to land the job, because we can always work on your skills to survive the job and excel on the job after you land it, but we need you to land it first to be given that opportunity. So I wanted to highlight this because I think a lot of people kind of misinterpreted it and got like upset when they saw their odds were really low. But it's something that I feel like if interpreted properly, like it's a nice way to kind of see where you stand relative to everything else. So let me see if I can, my computer's
Hey,
cool.
Patrick.
Yeah, what's up?
We have an interesting question. Two interesting questions. One is from IG. I'll read it out quickly. My
Sure.
odds are 1% breaking the bulge bracket. How accurate would you say the calculator is, and what can I do to significantly boost those odds?
Yeah. So if your odds are at 1%, my guess is you maybe need a visa in the US. Now, if you need a visa in the US, your OPT, for example, this is a lot of candidates, we see this. Your goal, yes, could be elite boutique, bulge bracket bank, but your goal of getting into front office investment banking is incredibly difficult because, again, you're up against the top candidates. And a lot of our international students that come in and are needing help, that are coming from a lot from India, a lot from China. They're coming in, they're doing a master's in finance that's a non-target school, thinking that if I do this master's in finance, I'm going to get an investment banking role. And it's just not the case. If you look at the placement from the international kids coming to these master's in finance programs versus the kids that don't need the visa, it's night and day. The kids who don't need the visa have decent odds. The kids that do need the visa end up usually having to go to more middle office, back office, more support roles, operational roles. Oftentimes are more technically sound in terms of they have there's a lot more engineers coming that have, Python experience. So they can do great work and get a good job. It's just less frequently in the front office IB divisions. So to get your odds up, it's going to be everything we teach in WSO Academy. It's going to be making sure your resume is polished and meets the standards of a high finance role. It's going to make sure your LinkedIn matches that. It's going to make sure that your interview skills and your networking skills are on point. It's going to make sure you do enough mock interviews. So you're getting not just the like the simple questions, right? Of what, tell me about yourself, why IB, but you're getting the more complex questions and delivering them in such a way that's going to be compelling. So are your stories compelling? When somebody asks you, what's your biggest regret in life? Do you freeze up and have to come up with something on the fly, or are you prepared for that question? When somebody asks you, what's a conflict you've had with a peer? Are you freezing up or are you prepared? And so these are things that we take care of through the Academy, but it's also something, you can do on your own. It's just the work has to be done at some point. And ideally it's done early on in your master's or early on in your undergraduate studies, such that by the time recruiting opens up, you're ready. Because again, it's super early now. For undergraduates, it's that second year. And for master students, it's typically right when you get on campus. Within a month, you're doing coffee chats, we have an MBA from Wharton in the Academy. She's going through the gauntlet right now. It's literally back to back to back to back, like coffee chats. She's going from Philly to New York on trains, and it's tough. And she's in a lot of processes with bulge bracket banks and elite boutiques, but it's very competitive. And so in terms of trying to increase your odds, it's basically starting from the beginning, making sure this shell is polished, your exterior shell. And when I say exterior shell, I mean, what are you presenting to the outside world before they even talk to you? So resume and LinkedIn, that should be extremely polished. You should look the part. and you should make sure that you're highlighting valuation skills, financial modeling skills. Sometimes I see people like, why am I not getting picked? And I look at their, I'm trying to get into investment banking, and I look at their CV and I look at their LinkedIn. I'm like, well, because your resume and your LinkedIn like screams data analyst. It doesn't scream IB analyst. So make sure you're kind of branding yourself properly. One of the other things we do for academy students is they do come into a finance research internship with us. So that helps with branding. It's important, especially for freshmen, especially for people who don't have the prior finance experience, to get some sort of internship, some sort of branding on the resume, which points to the skills they developed that are relevant to the job they're applying to. Sounds obvious, but sometimes people are like, why isn't this not working? I have really high marks and I have really high grades and whatnot. So what was the other question, Amir? Was there something else?
The other question, how do you improve a 50-50 chance, given that things like good previous experience, need for visa, semi-target school are constants and cannot be changed?
That's going to be on, the soft skills. That's going to be on your interview skills, your networking skills. So yeah, here we go. Yeah. So even though you can't change necessarily what the odds calculator is spitting out, if you work on all of the other things, you can actually pretty significantly improve things. And sometimes people assume they're really good interviewers. I had a call today with somebody who was a very confident sophomore. But I could just tell, I'm like, you may be able to land interviews because you're really good at networking, but when they ask you an advanced accounting question, or they ask you a tricky M&A or LBO, advanced technical, how do you feel about that? And he admitted, he's like, I'm not ready. And so my point is, that one individual doesn't have a lot of time because he's a sophomore at a I'd call it a lower, pretty much a non-target. So I think from that point, it's important that like you realize where your weaknesses are and you try to shore those up with as much support as possible and as many reps as possible. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Shiv Ratan, I'm not sure I know your question. You want to become an algorithm development. What course must I learn if I'm studying BYC, computer science in a low tier university? I'm honest, I'm not that well versed in that, so I wouldn't know how to answer that question. Oh, what makes a good? Yes, what makes a good networker? This is great. I could riff on this for hours. So what makes a good networker? And unfortunately, I have to leave in about 2 to 3 minutes. So do get your questions in if you want. We can do a couple more here. But what makes a good networker really is a couple things. Well, first off, I want to say that networking is kind of a yucky word because I really like to think of it as relationship building. And everyone knows the phrase like you can only go as far as the people you know. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Here we go. Yeah, you only go as far as the people you know. And I honestly believe that's very accurate, but it's not just about the people you know. It's about the reason for this is because you're not going to hear about the jobs that are never posted on LinkedIn, One Click Apply, or posted to Indeed. There's a huge shadow job market. The way to hear about these is to be talking to a lot of people in the industry or that you want to get into. Because people are like, why does networking even matter? It's so obvious what you're trying to do. Well, if you approach it as a transaction, if you approach networking as I'm going to get something out of this call, I'm doing this call because I want an interview, then yeah, your odds of actually having a lot of success is incredibly low. So what I'd say is if you're approaching it as genuine interest in what they've done in their path, in their career, it tends to go much better. If you're approaching it without the desire to get an interview in the short term, it tends to go much better. If you're approaching it with a year in advance prior to when you need the job, it tends to go much better. If you already have a job and you're networking, guess what? It goes better. So point is, networking is the most successful and the relationships seem more genuine when you don't need anything from the person. So when is that? When are those times? Ask yourself those questions. If you're about to graduate and suddenly you decide, okay, now I'm going to network. Do you think it's as effective? It's not as effective because it's obvious what you want. You come across as desperate. People don't want to help someone who's desperate. It's basic psychology. People want to help people who are on the up, who are going up. People want to help winners. People want to attach themselves to winners. So the point is, what makes a good networker? They network when they don't need anything. They show genuine interest and care for the other person. They want to add value wherever they can. They're looking at it as building a long-term relationship. They're not looking for a transaction. They don't read off a list of questions that they have pre-prepared. They actually have a normal conversation with the person. How do you get good at this? I'm not good at that. I always freeze up. You get good at this by becoming a good listener. You get good at this by actually doing a lot of them and not putting pressure on yourself to impress the other person if you don't know anything. Now, if you're very knowledgeable about restructuring and you're talking to a restructuring banker, sure, you can ask more detailed, nuanced questions, but your goal shouldn't be to show off your knowledge. Your goal should be to learn yourself and to figure out, how did that person get to where they are? And is there something I can derive from that information? If you do that, I think it tends to go much better. It tends to make people like you. I always say, go humble and hungry. Show humble, be incredibly humble, be incredibly hungry. And those tend to be the people that professionals want to help the most in getting to that next stage. So here's a great question. So on the networking question, 20 plus people on the odds calculator seems like a lot. Is it even possible to have that many phone coffee chats a month? If yes, I think I'm doing something wrong. I can't even get one a week! Exclamation point. Well, this is why you need to have a system in place in order to make sure that your funnel, you're widening the top of your funnel. So think of a sales, any sales process, you think of it as a funnel, right? Like this. You have leads at the top that you're collecting. Some are dropping out for different reasons, but then eventually it's a funnel. Some come through and they convert, right? If you think of what it is applying to any job, trying to get into any role, it's just a sales process. You're selling your labor to the company. So if you think of leads as just connections into the company and applications and whatnot, but you think of it more as networking, if you widen the top of that funnel really wide, even if your funnel is pretty narrow because you're not the ideal student, some will still probably drop through. Now, if you really have a lot of things going against you, low GPA, need a visa, you're at a non-target school, you have no relevant experience, it's probably going to look like, I don't care if you open it up super wide, it's still going to look completely closed off. Now, if you have other things going for you where like you're an incredible student, you don't even need to have that wide of a funnel because it's going to look open like this. You could have a very narrow top funnel and you'll still drop and get offers because you basically have the perfect background. Now, most people are somewhere in between, where widening the top of that funnel will actually help create a lot more opportunities, get a lot more phone calls. If we think of the first part of that funnel as like getting onto informational interviews, how do you make it so that you go from the limits of LinkedIn, which is about 100 connection requests a week, to actually 3 to 4 phone calls a week consistently? The way you do this is through, well, number one, making sure you're hitting the limits of LinkedIn, and be careful. Don't use bots. You will get kicked off LinkedIn. You're very good at detecting bots, so don't do that. Number one. Number two is making sure that when people do connect with you, your conversion rate should be about 20 to 30% from alumni, at least, that you actually follow up, but not on LinkedIn. Once they're connected to you on LinkedIn, you have their email, bring it off of LinkedIn and then leverage software. There's a lot of software you can attach to your Gmail, to your Outlook, that helps you stay organized. And these are software that we leverage in WSO Academy. We subscribe all of our students to it because it's so powerful. Basically, you want to be able to save your templates. You want to be able to have automatic reminders. So templates meaning networking templates. So things that are kind of the standard base emails you're going to be sending. Because after you go from a connection on LinkedIn and you jump to an email, you don't stop by saying, hey, thank you so much for the connection request. Can we talk in sometime in the next few weeks? And give up. Does a salesperson give up after one outreach? No, they'd be a terrible salesperson. So how do you become good at networking? We have to follow up. Now, are you going to be following up every day for weeks at a time? No, they're going to say, stop emailing me, you're crazy. But if you're emailing respectfully and you're widening the gaps of when you follow up each time, so in other words, you send the email. Week later, you follow up when they ignore you, which 99% will ignore you. After that, you wait 3 weeks, you follow up again. And then one last time again 3 months later. Now, if you have a cycle where you're dropping 30 new leads into this email cycle and system every single time, you will be getting 3 to 4 phone calls every single week, not one. Unless something's really bad with your templates, unless you're oversharing. I see this a lot where like the first email is like a book about themselves. Horrible, bad networker. So if you do all those things, you should be able to get on 3 to 4 phone calls. Now, so you think, well, that's not that many. How do you get to 20 plus? The people who are at 20 plus on the networking per month, usually it's because they have incredibly strong alumni bases. Once they're getting on phone calls, people, they're asking for additional referrals and following up. And so they've gotten into this system, into this practice. And so that's tends to be, they're almost doing 1 a day, sometimes 2, 3 a day. It's crazy. These are the people who are super active in recruiting. They understand how powerful this can be, and they've taken it upon themselves to be really aggressive with it. And so if you do select that on the odds calculator, you'll see it'll give you a pretty nice little boost on your odds compared to if you had only, for example, talked to 1 to 4 people in the previous month. Unfortunately, I have to leave, but I can do this again. Quick question: what's your opinion on European schools like HEC or LBS MIM programs? What's the odds of getting an IB? MIM lower than obviously the standard Masters in Finance programs, but both super strong names. HEC and LBS, incredibly strong alumni base. So I'd say the odds are lower than the traditional Masters programs there. It probably handicaps you by about 10% on your overall odds. In terms of, I had a rough guesstimate based on what I've seen. Is it good to attach your resume on the first email? I typically say no. I like to have the phone conversation, and then usually the person will ask for the email, ask for the resume so that they can pass it on to HR if they want to refer you. Thank you so much, everybody. Got to run. It's been a half hour. I will try to do this more frequently, answer more questions about the odds calculator or anything in general around recruiting, networking. So hopefully I can provide more value. Thank you so much, everybody. Talk soon.